What's up, Kingdom Fam? It has been a long minute, okay? It has been 8 months exact since I've last been on this channel. Um, I really have no excuse, okay? I really have no excuse. God has been pushing me back to this podcast, and I really need to stand firm in it. So here I am, and I plan to be more consistent, be more intentional. God told me that is my word for the rest of 2023, going into the next couple of years. Just be intentional. And so, if there's anyone out there that's like me, sometimes you may feel unqualified. You may feel like there's too much going on in your life and so many different voices around you. There's people in your family, in your friend group, yourself. You talk yourself out of things because you're looking at what other people have to do it, right? So you're looking at how people have these fancy cameras, how people have these fancy mics, how people have um, fancy editing skills, and you're like, I can't do all of that and this and that. If God tells you to do something, He will give you the tools to do it, but you have to start. And when you start, it's not going to be perfect, but you have to start. Because if you keep saying tomorrow, tomorrow, it will never be. Because, child, what did I say? It's been 8 months. Yeah, it's been 8 months. So, prime example, okay? Learn from me. Um, don't delay. There is a lot of unnecessary pain that comes with delay. There's a lot of distractions that you will most likely be entertaining because of your lack of obedience. And so, um, let's do better, friends. Okay, let's do better. And I'm saying let's because we're all human and we make mistakes. But like I said, I want to be more intentional because that is what God is telling me to do. And so here I am today after 8 months. Enough of beating myself up, enough of telling myself I'm gonna do it, I wanna do it, I wanna do this, da 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 da. I'm here. So, today's scripture that I wanted to share, this is the NLT version. I'm gonna share both versions because they are both very descriptive. I love the way they describe them. You get two core meanings from both. So today's verse is Psalm 73:26. This is the NLT version. It says, "My health may fail, and my spirit may grow weak, but God remains the strength of my heart. He is mine forever." And I also want to compare that to the NIV version because that's the normal version. That's the one I usually read. So it says, "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." So what this spoke to me today is the fact that my plans will fail, my money will fail, my ideas, my willpower, anything that I try to do by myself apart from God will fail. But when I allow God to lead me and I try my absolute best to stay close to Him, and I'm keeping an open ear and an open mind to hear what He's saying, that He will remain my portion. But we have to stop accepting everything as our portion, right? Like, we start thinking that the circumstances we grew up in is our portion, right? We start thinking that because I grew up poor, I will always be poor. Or because I grew up around toxic family members or people who had problems with trauma, I will always struggle with trauma or paranoia. You don't have to be that. You don't have to be a product of that. That is not your portion. Jesus is your portion, right? It says that God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Forever is forever. That's eternal. That's something that lasts outside of the natural time stamp, right? A lot of people put limits on things, but forever is more than what you can count on your fingers, more than what anybody can ever imagine, right? So let's not limit ourselves to our circumstances. Most importantly, let's recognize that we are limited beings, but that God is not limited, and because He is our portion, we have access to a eternal realm, which means that when we ask God for things that we need, and as long as they align with His will, He will give us exactly what we need to do what He's telling us to do. Okay? So today's song is My Worship. I truly believe that gratitude is a perfect way to reframe your mind from distractions of how we can start getting in the mode of complaining about what we don't have. Instead of that, let's start appreciating what we do have. And so how we do that is we find ways to be grateful. I may have been annoyed that someone disturbed my peace, and they'll repeat something that I told them to stop doing. So in that instance, I would have to say, Lord, they are annoying me, but I'm grateful that I even have somebody to annoy me. You know what I mean? Because some people don't have anyone around them at all. No friends, no family. So we have to find reasons to be grateful. There's always something to be grateful for, even in the smallest details. We miss the small things, and that is the reason why we don't appreciate when those bigger things do come, because we have not been grateful or managed the small things well. So we can't possibly ask God for more or expect more from God when we have not properly stewarded over the small things that He's given us. So first we got to learn how to steward over the small things in our life and appreciate the small things, because God works through the ordinary, right? Not the perfect, not the extravagant, right? That is a process. Sanctification is a process. Purification is a process. And sanctification is pretty much just that that dying of self, right? Taking off the old man, the old ways, the old habits, putting that aside and deciding to take the path that God has set over your life. And purification really is just purging. It's that purging, that separating of old things, right? So it's that renewal of your heart and your mind, your soul, and your spirit that set it towards pure things, right? So, okay, let me not go too deep in a rabbit hole. We're going to get into this worship. So, again, it is called My Worship by Phil Thompson. And this song really just reminds me to be grateful for, be grateful that God is my portion. Okay. Poverty is not your portion. Cancer is not your portion. Sickness is not your portion, right? Depression is not your portion. So let's get into it and let's be grateful and worship a God that is worthy of all our praise. Okay? Because He is so good. God's character is not dependent on your circumstance, He is separate from your circumstance. Let's not get those two mixed up. So here we go. Lord, you are worthy, and no one can worship you for me. For all the things you've done for me, and no one can worship you for me. Here's my worship, all of my worship. Receive my worship, all of my worship. Here's my worship, all of my worship. Receive my worship, all of my worship. Lord, you are worthy, and no one can worship you for me. Done for me, and no one can worship you for me. Here's my worship, all of my worship. Receive my worship, all of my worship. Here's my worship, all of my worship. Receive my worship, all of my worship. Here's my worship, all of my worship. Receive my worship, all of my worship. Here's my worship, all of my worship.